I still remember the way the numbers lined up on the screen. For a second, my brain didn't even register what I was seeing. It was like looking at a foreign language. I stared, blinked, and then stared again. My hands started shaking so bad I almost dropped the ticket. $20 million. Me. Out of all people. The silence in that room was so loud. I could hear the buzzing of the old fridge and the faint hum of the street outside. I wasn't even breathing that I sat down at the kitchen table, the ticket lying in front of me like some kind of sacred artifact. My palms were sweaty, and I kept running my finger over the numbers, like maybe the ink would smudge and prove this wasn't real. I thought, no way. This kind of thing doesn't happen to people like me. And then, out of nowhere, my mind pulled me back to when I was a kid, standing barefoot in our tiny living room, watching my mom tape up the same old curtain for the third time because we couldn't afford new ones. I remember staring at the hole in my sneakers during school, trying to hide my socks peeking through. Money was always this shadow hanging over us. Every bill, every meal, every fight in the house. And now here it was, the answer. Or at least, I thought it was. I leaned back in my chair and laughed, an awkward, shaky laugh, the kind that comes from somewhere between joy and panic. My heart was pounding in my ears. I thought about all the things I could do: pay off debts, buy my parents a new house, send my siblings to college, finally give my family the life we always dreamed about. For once in my life, I wouldn't have to say, I can't afford it. But there was also this strange, surreal emptiness in that first moment. Like the air got thinner. Like the universe had just handed me something too big to hold. I stared at that ticket, half convinced it might vanish if I looked away, once the shock settled, or at least, once I could breathe again without feeling like my chest was caving in. My mind went straight to them. My family. I didn't think about cars or mansions or yachts. No, I thought about my mom's tired hands, the wrinkles etched into her face from years of worry. I thought about my dad, who always carried this invisible weight on his shoulders, the kind that bent his back a little lower every year. And my siblings, God, my siblings, each of them stuck in their own struggles, scraping by just like I had. The thought of finally saying, "Don't worry, I've got you," lit me up inside. For the first time in my life, I had the power to erase some of their pain. That was the dream, not the money itself, but the freedom it could give us. All that I remember calling them, my voice trembling, trying to hold back this nervous laugh. I did it. I won. 20 million. For a split second, there was silence on the other end, and then it was like fireworks went off. Screams, cheers, disbelief, my mom crying, my siblings yelling in the background. That sound, that was pure happiness. And it was addicting. In that moment, I felt like a hero, like the golden child, like I'd finally done something worthy enough to make up for all the years I felt like a burden. I thought, this is it. This is my purpose. I'm going to save them. I started making lists in my head. Pay off the house. Get everyone reliable cars. Clear debts. College tuition. Even small things, like buying my mom those brand new curtains she never let herself splurge on, or stocking the fridge so full it groaned when you opened the door. The picture in my head was like one of those perfect holiday commercials. Family gathered around the table, smiling, laughing, not a worry in the world. Looking back now, it feels almost childish how much faith I put in that dream. I thought money would glue us together, heal old wounds, erase old fights. I believed generosity could rewrite history. At the time, though, I didn't question it for a second. I was so sure I'd finally given my family the one thing we were always missing. The first year felt like running on adrenaline. I didn't even think twice about what I was spending. If someone needed something, I just did it. My mom wanted a new car? Done. My brother had debt collectors breathing down his neck? Paid in full. My sister dreamed of going back to school? I wrote the check. It was like I was Santa Claus, except it wasn't just Christmas. It was every day, and I loved it. I loved watching their faces light up. The way my little cousins looked at me like I was some kind of magician who could pull comfort and security out of thin air. I'd drop by with gifts or wire money late at night when someone texted me about a bill they couldn't cover. The feeling of fixing things, it was intoxicating. But somewhere along the way, the line between helping and caring everyone blurred. What started as little favors turned into full-on responsibility. Suddenly, I was the one making sure everyone's rent was paid, everyone's medical bills were cleared, Everyone's fridge was full. Their problems became my problems, and I wore that role like armor. I told myself, this is what family does. This is why I won. To take care of them. I'll never forget one night. It was around 2 in the morning. I was sitting at my desk, surrounded by papers, bills, loan agreements, receipts. It felt less like I was rich and more like I was running some chaotic charity where the requests never stopped. I remember the glow of my laptop screen burning into my eyes, the cursor blinking, like it was mocking me while I tried to figure out who needed what first. I told myself I didn't mind, that this was what I'd signed up for. But the truth? I was tired, exhausted, and yet I couldn't admit that. Not to them, not even to myself. Because deep down, I was terrified that if I stopped giving, I'd stop being valuable to them. The strangest part? I had all this money, but I never really used it for me. I didn't travel the world. I didn't buy the sports car. I didn't even upgrade my phone half the time. Everything I touched went back into the family, as if building their kingdom was enough to fill me. I told myself, their happiness is my happiness. But there were cracks forming. Small ones. I just didn't want to see them yet. First, it was all gratitude. Hugs, smiles, tears. But gratitude has an expiration date I didn't know about. Slowly, things shifted. The thank yous started to sound more like about time. Requests weren't framed as requests anymore. They came like expectations. When are you going to cover this? Can you take care of that? It was subtle, like sand slipping through your fingers. I remember one night. We were all sitting around the dinner table. I had just paid off my sister's student loans, and I brought it up casually, expecting, I don't know, some excitement. Maybe relief. Instead, she just shrugged and said, yeah, but now I need a car too. I can't be riding the bus to class. Everyone laughed, like it was some kind of inside joke. I laughed too, but inside, something sank. It was like the gift had evaporated the second it was given. Then there was my dad. He had always been this tough, proud man. Growing up, every dollar mattered, and he made sure we knew it. But now with the money flowing, I caught him making comments under his breath. If you really cared, you'd. Or, that's nothing compared to what you could do. Those words stung more than I let on. I'd nod, brush it off, tell myself, he doesn't mean it. He's just stressed. But lying in bed later, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't stop replaying those lines. It's strange how quickly generosity can turn into a scoreboard. No matter how much I did, the list of what I hadn't done yet loomed larger. I started noticing little things, my calls being ignored unless I was sending money, cousins showing up only when they needed help. The family gatherings that used to feel warm suddenly felt transactional, like I was less a brother or son and more a wallet with a heartbeat. The worst part? I blamed myself. I kept thinking maybe I wasn't giving enough. Maybe I was being selfish for even noticing the shift. I'd stare at myself in the mirror, toothbrush hanging in my mouth, and mutter, don't be ungrateful. You can fix this. Just do more. But deep down, something was unraveling. The joy of giving was turning into a quiet dread. And though I didn't know it then, I was standing on the edge of a moment that would break everything. It didn't happen in some dramatic movie-like setting. No thunderstorm, no slammed fists on the table. It was just an ordinary evening. That almost made it worse that I had come by the house with groceries, bags full of fresh produce, snacks, and a few little things I knew my parents liked. The kitchen smelled like my mom's cooking, and for a moment, it felt like old times. Normal. Safe. I set the bags down, smiled, and said something dumb like, don't worry, I've got dinner covered for the rest of the week. My dad was sitting in his chair, the one by the window. He didn't look up at me. He just muttered, almost under his breath, you think money makes you important? At first, I laughed. I thought maybe he was joking, poking fun at me like he used to when I was a kid. So I smiled and said, come on, Dad. I'm just trying to help. That's when he turned. His eyes, God, I'll never forget his eyes. Cold, hard, like I was a stranger in my own home. He raised his voice, sharp enough to cut through the room. You've done enough. Get out. Get out, you miserable. The words hung in the air, like smoke. My mom froze. My siblings went quiet. I just stood there, groceries still in my hands, staring at him, waiting for the punchline. But it never came. Miserable. That word echoed in my head over and over. After everything, the debts paid, the houses, the cars, the sleepless nights balancing everyone's problems with my checkbook. That was what I was to him. Miserable. I felt the bag slip from my hands. Apples rolled across the floor, thudding against the chair legs. The sound was so small, but in that silence, it felt deafening. My throat tightened. I wanted to say something, to defend myself, to remind him of all I had done, but the words never came. I just stood there, feeling smaller than I had in years. Like I was 10 years old again, being scolded for something I couldn't fix. My chest burned, and I could feel the tears threatening, but I refused to let them fall in front of him. So I nodded, swallowed the lump in my throat, and turned toward the door. Each step away from that room felt like walking out of a life I no longer recognized. That night, I realized money could buy a lot of things, but not the one thing I had been chasing the whole time: love that didn't come with conditions. When I walked out that door, it felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. The night was quiet, too quiet, like the world itself was holding its breath. I remember fumbling with my keys, my hands trembling so badly I could barely get them into the lock of my car. My reflection in the window looked like a stranger. Red eyes, jaw clenched, pretending I wasn't braking. I sat there behind the wheel, just frozen. The engine wasn't on. The radio was silent. The only sound was the faint ticking of the cooling metal as the night air settled over it. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Inside my head, though, it was anything but quiet. His voice was on repeat. "Get out. You miserable." Over and over, louder each time, until it was all I could hear. I tried to fight it. I told myself he didn't mean it. He was angry. He doesn't really feel that way. But the truth is, deep down, I believed him. That word, miserable, it stuck to me like tar. Because hadn't I been miserable, running myself into the ground trying to buy everyone's happiness? Miserable, carrying weight that wasn't mine? It was like he had ripped open the one wound I'd been hiding from myself. The car smelled faintly of the groceries I'd been carrying, the apples and bread still sitting on the passenger seat where I dropped them in my rush to leave. I stared at them, ridiculous little reminders of the fact that I was trying, always trying. And yet, in his eyes, I was nothing. I don't know how long I sat there. Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe an hour. Time didn't feel real. I kept glancing back at the house, half expecting someone, anyone, to come out, to call me back, to undo what had just happened. But the windows stayed dark. The door never opened. It was like I had already been erased. When I finally turned the key, the engine roared to life and the vibration rattled through my chest. The sound almost startled me. I pulled away slowly, headlights cutting through the empty street, my heart pounding with every turn. But inside, I was hollow, numb. That drive home was the loneliest ride of my life. The city lights blurred past, and for the first time, the money, the houses, the cars, none of it mattered. Because all I could think was, how did I give everything and still end up with nothing? It's funny how betrayal doesn't just live in the present. It drags the past along with it, twisting old memories until they hurt in ways they never did before. That night, lying awake in my apartment, I couldn't stop my mind from rewinding. Back to childhood, back to moments I once held close. I thought about the evenings when my dad would come home from work, boots caked in dirt, shoulders slumped, but face still trying to stay strong for us. I used to run to him, tugging at his sleeve, and he'd scoop me up like I was the most important thing in his world. I remember the smell of his jacket, a mix of sweat, dust, and something oddly comforting. Back then, I believed his love was unshakable. I thought about the little lessons he gave me: how to ride a bike, how to throw a ball, even how to fold a dollar bill neatly instead of crumpling it. He'd say, "Respect money, son. Don't waste it." Those words used to echo in my head whenever I counted coins from my part-time jobs, dreaming of a future where I'd make enough to take care of him. But now those same memories felt like knives. Because how do you reconcile the man who once lifted you onto his shoulders with the same man who told you to get out? How do you take those soft lessons and pair them with that one word, miserable, spat at you like poison? I even thought about my mom's quiet sacrifices. The nights she'd skip dinner so there'd be enough for us. The way she'd hum to herself while sewing patches onto my clothes so I wouldn't feel embarrassed at school. Those memories once made me feel grateful, but now they were tangled with guilt. Because all I wanted was to honor those sacrifices, and instead, all my giving had somehow turned me into the villain in my own family's story. Lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling, the glow of the streetlight bleeding through the blinds. My chest ached with the weight of every memory. The laughter, the lessons, the warmth, all of it was poison now. Betrayal doesn't just change the present. It rewrites the past. And suddenly, even my happiest memories felt like lies that I closed my eyes, but sleep never came. Just the sound of my dad's voice, louder than ever, cutting through every memory I tried to hold on to. In the days that followed, I walked around like a ghost. The silence in my apartment was heavier than any words my father could have thrown at me. No phone calls, no messages, unless it was someone asking for money. The world felt muted, like colors had drained out, and I was left wandering through the ruins of a life I thought I was building. But somewhere in that emptiness, a strange clarity started to grow. It wasn't loud or sudden. It was quiet, like a small flame refusing to die. One morning, I caught myself standing in the kitchen, staring at a cup of coffee. No texts buzzing, no requests waiting, just me and the steam rising from that mug. For the first time in years, I asked myself a question I had never dared to. What if I stopped living for everyone else? At first, the thought scared me. Guilt came rushing in, sharp and relentless. Family is everything, I had been taught. You're supposed to sacrifice. You're supposed to give. But hadn't I already done that? And where had it left me? Miserable. The very word he had branded me. With that, I started small. I turned off my phone for an afternoon. I didn't answer the calls that came in later. The world didn't end. My chest tightened at first, waiting for the sky to fall. But instead, there was quiet. A kind of peace I didn't even recognize that I began writing again. Just scribbles. In a notebook at night, thoughts I'd buried under piles of obligations. Some of it was angry. Some of it was sad. But some of it was hopeful. Like little pieces of me were clawing their way back to the surface that I walked around the city, headphones in, watching strangers pass by. For once, I wasn't thinking about who needed what from me. I was just existing. And though it felt foreign, it also felt good. Of course, the guilt never fully left. It lingered, whispering that I was selfish, that I was abandoning the very people I had sworn to protect. But another voice, quieter, steadier, kept pushing back. You can't save people who only want to drain you. You deserve to exist too. And maybe that was the first real step forward. Not some grand declaration, not cutting ties with fireworks and drama, just sitting with myself in the ruins of everything I thought I knew and realizing there was still something worth saving. There's a loneliness that comes with losing the people you thought would stand beside you forever. But there's also space. Space for something new to grow. It took me a while to see it that way. For weeks, I kept waiting for the phone to ring with an apology, for the door to open and my dad to take back his words. That moment never came. What did come, though, were people I never expected. It started with a neighbor. She was older, kind, the type who always left her door open and waved at anyone passing by. One day, I helped her carry groceries up the stairs. Nothing big, just 2 bags. She smiled and insisted I stay for tea. That afternoon turned into an hour of easy conversation, no hidden agenda, no quiet expectation that I'd solve her life. Just 2 people talking. I left her apartment feeling lighter, like maybe not every relationship had to feel like a transaction. Then came others, friends I'd neglected while drowning in family obligations. One invited me to a barbecue. Another dragged me out to a movie. At first, I hesitated. My instinct was to say no, to retreat into the safety of solitude. But slowly, I let them pull me back into the world. And to my surprise, I found joy again. Laughter around a fire pit, the buzz of late-night conversations, the warmth of being surrounded by people who saw me, not my bank account. That I started to understand something I'd never allowed myself to before. Family isn't always about blood. Family is the people who choose you, who stand with you even when you have nothing to offer but your presence. The ones who don't measure your worth by what you give them, but by who you are. One night, sitting at a small table in a crowded diner, I looked around at this odd mix of people, neighbors, old friends, even new ones I'd barely known a few months, and it hit me. The warmth in that room was what I'd been chasing all along. Not wealth, not recognition, just belonging. And here it was, finally, in the unlikeliest of places. Did it erase the pain of what my dad said? No, that scar is still there. But it showed me something I desperately needed to learn. I wasn't alone. I wasn't unlovable. And I didn't need $20 million to earn a seat at the table. Sometimes I still replay that night in my head. The groceries on the floor, my dad's words hanging heavy in the air. For a long time, it haunted me. I kept asking myself, what more could I have done? Where did I go wrong? But now, looking back, I realized the truth. I didn't go wrong. I gave everything I had. I tried. And sometimes, even that isn't enough for people who've decided they'll never see you clearly. The money, it didn't ruin me. It revealed them. It showed me who saw me as a son, a brother, and who only saw a wallet. That's a brutal lesson, but also a freeing one. Because once you know the truth, you can stop breaking yourself trying to change it. That I don't regret helping them. Those years of giving came from love, and I won't apologize for that. But I've also learned that love doesn't mean self-erasure. You can set yourself on fire to keep people warm, but eventually, you're just ashes. And I was tired of being ashes. Now, my life is quieter. Smaller in some ways, bigger in others. I still have money, but I spend it differently. On experiences. On people who show up for me even when I have nothing to give. On building a life that feels like mine. There's power in saying no. Power in choosing yourself. Even if it means losing the people you thought you couldn't live without. Doi. Miss my family. Sometimes. The memories, yes. The idea of what we could have been. But the version of them I kept alive in my head. The grateful, tight-knit family who'd stand by me no matter what. That was just a fantasy. The reality was harsher, and I've accepted that, and in a strange way, I'm grateful. Because in losing them, I found something I never knew I had. Freedom. Freedom to live without constantly proving my worth. Freedom to love without fear of being used. Freedom to just be. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. Sometimes, the people closest to you will hurt you the deepest. And sometimes, the greatest act of love isn't giving them everything. It's finally giving something back to yourself. When he told me, get out, you miserable. I did. And maybe, for the first time in my life, that was the best decision I ever made.